Very good morning to all of you. So, on behalf of the Department of Political Science, I welcome you all to this webinar on field-based research in the COVID-19 era in India, issues and alternatives. Firstly, I thank all the participants who are here and who have given an overwhelming response to our call for participation. So as we start off today, I extend a very warm welcome. I'm Ramya Chitrapu, doctoral research scholar in the Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad. So it has been really on a very positive note. We start off this morning. Before we begin, here are a few instructions to the participants. As I have already mentioned earlier, the participants are requested to kindly mute their audio and video for better connectivity and clarity. And the participants may send their answers in the chat box in the Zoom meeting. And if somebody is accessing the Zoom meeting or this webinar through YouTube, we will provide you a link shortly on how to, put your questions to the panelists. And so the general design of this webinar is we will have a few introductions, and then we have two speakers who would address specifically on this issue that we are talking about today. And towards the last half an hour of the session, we have a question and answers where we would be taking questions by the chat window, and we would be, posing those questions to the panelists, and they will give you the responses. And we request the participants to be very specific with their questions because of the paucity of the time and because of the connections and the new life that we are living in this era of the pandemic. So now I once again welcome all the participants, and now I request Professor Kam Khan Suwan Hosing, the head of the Department, Political Science, University of Hyderabad, to make his opening remarks. Over to you, sir. Sir, I hope, yes, sir.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me first of all welcome each and every one of you to this series of webinars, which is organized by the Department of Political Science. I would like to thank the eminent panelists, Professor Sanjay Kumar of Logniti and CSDS, and Professor Durga Prasad for having consented to be panelists and delivering lecture on the issue of doing field-based research in the era of COVID. I think this is a very relevant topic which has been troubling us simply because the outbreak of COVID has drastically defined the way in which we do field-based research. The kind of disruptions that it has caused and the new challenges that it imposed in terms of grounding our theoretical understanding and knowledge about electoral politics, and for that matter, the larger issue of politics is quite pertinent. Therefore, I think that the webinar today is important and significant because we have two very eminent scholars who have long-standing expertise and intimate knowledge about doing field-based research. I hope the deliberation today would throw significant light and prepare us to do in very nuanced and very fruitful and productive ways of doing field-based research, because this, as I have said, has been disrupted as a result of the pandemic. I hope that the scholars from different departments of the university as well as outside the university would benefit from these two important talks today. I hope that all of us would be again fully benefiting from these two deliberations. Over to you, Ramya.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. So now I request Professor Venkateshu from the Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, to introduce the participants to the theme of today's webinar, which is field-based research in the era of COVID-19. Sir, over to you, sir.
Good morning to you all, and also warm welcome to the distinguished speakers as well as the participants of this webinar, that is field-based research in between or in middle of pandemic and natural calamity. Now we are struck by two important crises today. One is this pandemic, another one is the natural calamity. Across the country you can come across huge rains, floods and tufans, etc. So in between, what is the need to have an evidence-based research? There is a field-based, evidence-based research, because these are the very important. This is the very critical situation where we are social scientist interventions has got a lot of role to play in terms of producing of the field-based inputs for the policy makers. So here, without taking much time, I straightway introduce the two important speakers. One is Professor Sanjay Kumar. He was Director, Center for the Study of Developing Societies, and now is part of the Lokniti network, which has been specialized organization in the election studies since 1960s, CSDS. And in fact, Professor Sanjay Kumar is my mentor, his guide, he trained me in the cephalogy, and now we are the part of this Lokniti team network. And indeed, it is a privilege to introduce to you Sanjay Kumarji. And he has got a lot of extensive field work since long time, since my student days. I have been observing him that he has produced a lot of field-based work, and he has contributed immensely to the, you must have seen in the Economic and Political Weekly, then the English, Hindi dailies, TV channels, and widespread exposure he is having, and there is a rich experience in the area of the field-based research. Probably he will give some of the inputs, but in fact, one of our study, the Lokniti study, that police and Naxals area is struck out for the last more than 6 months because of this pandemic. In this context, what we are supposed to do is also one of the serious challenge. In fact, so many other research projects as well are in the blue line. And another equally important speaker today is Professor Durga Prasad. Durga Prasad was was his colleague as well as he was our role model in National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. Whenever we are supposed to write a report on the basis after completing of the field work, invariably we will have to look at Professor Durga Prasad, because Durga Prasad is known for producing of the excellent field-based reports, especially with more specific reference to the decentralized delivery of services like health. And in fact, is decades together rich experience in this field, because NIRDPR is a specialized organization in the field-based research. And after his superannuation, now he has immensely contributed and using his rich experience of NIRDPR to render a lot of service to government of Odisha in general, and Central University of Odisha, Koraput, as a consultant. He has been doing a lot of action research. In fact, he has been at present, he is in the field. He is doing in the tribal areas, the remote tribal areas, and he has been extending almost right hand to Professor I. Ramabrahmam, the distinguished academician come Vice Chancellor of Central University of Odisha. And in fact, recent times Odisha has been in the news because of decentralized management of the COVID crisis. Behind this initiation of the government of Odisha, I think these are the two important brains who have been working and providing the field-based inputs. Sir, you are welcome, and it is our privilege to invite on behalf of Department of Political Science, and both of them are very has got a rich experience, and it is the privilege of our students to have your nice interaction. With these few introductory remarks, now Ramya, now it is straightway ask the speakers to start.
Thank you so much, Professor Venkateshu. Now, as we move on to the major part of this webinar that we have already that we have all been eagerly looking forward for, So we will hear it from the researchers themselves. So I take this opportunity to welcome Professor Sanjay Kumar, Center for the Study of Developing Societies, to share his inputs and insights on dealing with the challenges of field-based research in the COVID-19 era. I know that Professor Venkateshu has actually, reduced my job of introducing the speakers, but a small little bio about the professors would actually, justify our choice for inviting them. So Professor Sanjay Kumar is a professor at the Center for Study of Developing Societies, and he was the former director of CSDS from 2014 to January 2020. With electoral politics as his core, Survey Method has been his tool to research on a very wide range of themes, including Indian youth, state of democracy in South Asia, state of Indian farmers, slums of Delhi, and electoral violence. As an accomplished scholar, Professor Sanjay Kumar has extensively published, written several books, edited volumes, and contributed chapters and published articles in various national and international research journals. His most recent book is The Post-Mandal Politics in Bihar, Changing Electoral Patterns, amongst others. Besides his scholarly contributions, he writes regularly for both national and regional newspapers, both in English and Hindi languages. His articles are published regularly in the Hindu, Indian Express, Asian Age, Deccan Chronicle, Dainik Bhaskar, Rajasthan Patrika, and The Mint. For many, he is also a well-known face on the Indian television as a popular psephologist and political commentator. He has also been an international election observer in many countries. Sir, I kindly request you to take over.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, for inviting me for giving this lecture. A special thanks to the head of the department, Dr. Son, my friend and my colleague, Professor Venkateshu, and Ramya, who has been associated with our Lokniti team in various capacities. So special thanks to all three of them for inviting me for delivering this lecture. What I intend to do is to make a short PPT on the topic of how do we do field-based research, how do we collect data during COVID times. And Venkateshu has already expanded the framework. In a sense, COVID is an example of a difficult time. So largely I would be talking about how do you do fieldwork during difficult times. When there are difficult times, and difficult times includes COVID, it also includes the situation which Professor Venkateshu mentioned. Floods are in different parts of the country. So if there are extraordinary situations, if there are extraordinary conditions, how do you do fieldwork? How do you manage fieldwork? Let me say the question may be very easy, that how do you do fieldwork in difficult situations? But I don't think there is any easy answer to that. It's not easy to give a clear-cut answer that how do you do fieldwork. It's very difficult to. So we have to collectively think. We have to collectively evolve a system. How do we have to do some experimentation to figure out how do we cope up with these difficult situations to do our fieldwork. I have a short PPT which I would like to share. So let me just try sharing the screen so that you will be able to look at the PPT and then we will proceed. Just give me a minute. Yes. So can you see the screen? Can you all see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Is the screen visible? Okay. Okay. So as you can see, I put the title Field-Based Research in the Era of COVID-19 in India, Issues and Challenges. So remember, we are, as I said, there is no clear answer to this question. And I'm just trying to take an example to explain why it is difficult to give an answer to this question. This is the COVID-19 times. And even with enormous development in the field of medical sciences, and we have been experiencing this throughout the world for the last 8 to 10 months. But do we have a specific answer to this question? in spite of enormous development in the field of medical sciences, we don't have an answer, clear-cut answer to how this virus spread. There are confusion about does it spread from food item or not, which medicine to be administered for the treatment, whether it is chloroquine, whether it is remdesivir or some other medicine. The point I'm trying to make is that on an issue which concerns our life and death, and in spite of so much of development in the field of medical science, not only in India, throughout the world, we have not been able to come up to a specific answer to these questions. So if there is no clear-cut answer to this question, we don't know an answer to this question. How do we handle COVID? What kind of treatment should be given to the patient? So it's not an easy answer. It's a easy question to pose. How do we do fieldwork? How do we collect data? But as I'm saying, it is not easy to give a clear-cut answer. And the reason I wanted to explain through this example is that even when we are struggling with our life and death, there are no clear-cut answer. How do we handle pandemic? So fieldwork or data collection is going to be extremely difficult in unusual situation. And as I said, unusual situation refers to COVID, to sometime when there's an earthquake, sometime there are flood. So it can never be easy. Again, to give you some examples, if a doctor needs to measure a temperature of a patient, we know the tool. We know that there is a tool to measure temperature, and what is that tool? We all know. So there is a standardized tool. We put thermometer in the mouth of the person and we know the temperature. But if there are complications, if the patient is not only suffering from fever, but there are complications, then doctor advises you to go for several tests. And I must tell you that some of these tests are purely random experiment, because doctors also don't know which test would give them the direction to move ahead. So they do some random test. So they will prescribe you 5-7 tests. Some of them may be all right, but some tests are random. Similarly, in this era of COVID, in this unusual situation, we need to think collectively. We need to think of different modes of data, collection collectively to arrive at what may be would be very difficult to say what may be the best mode of data collection. But if we think collectively, we may be able to arrive at what may be a better way of data collection. Now moving on to the core theme. What is expected of research? What do we expect of research? So the word research is self-explanatory. It comprises of two words. If we break research, one is and is search. It means whatever as a researcher you are trying to do, whenever you are trying to do research, whether as a PhD student or an MPhil student, or even for some project, it is expected that you will come up with something new. You will bring out some new theories. You may suggest some new findings. So something new has to come out from when you do research. You have to come up new. What we are dealing in social sciences. If somebody is doing business, producing car or TV or AC, if they say they are doing research, what do? They come up with new models. They come up with new color, new models, new AC, etc., etc. And this is deal with human beings. We deal with society. We deal with social aspect, behavior, emotions. Our output are not as tangible as in the other fields. Our raw material is also very different compared to the raw material of other industries. So we have a very difficult task. Tangible things can be identified very quickly, very easily. Tangible things can be gathered, can be hired very easily. But things which are not tangible, and we are not dealing with tangible things, we are dealing with human behavior, emotions, literature. So sometimes it may not be easy to gather raw material of that kind. So now the question is, so if it is so difficult, I'm saying I'm posing very tentative question. It is not easy. It's very difficult. How do we do that? Some material for our research. Should we decide not to collect information? Should we say that no, during difficult times it is not easy to collect raw material, so we should not be doing data collection work? No, we can't think about that. We can't say that we could do research without data, we could do research without data collection. We could possibly postpone it for some time if we know that what is the time duration of this difficult time. So we could possibly postpone it for some time, but we certainly can't collect information, but we certainly need to collect information if we want to do our analysis, if we are doing research. So possibly one question, should we not collect information, should we not collect data and just postpone it, that we will do our research without data? No, that's not possible, because in order to do research you have to collect information, you have to collect data. Possibly we could postpone it for some time, but only if we know what is the time duration of this uncertain time. If we don't know when it is going to come to an end, whether it is going to come to an end in September, in November, next year in March. So these are very difficult, uncertain times. And for such situations, we have to try and cope up with these times to collect our data. Possibly we cannot postpone it for indefinite times, because as you know, many of you are PhD students, we all have a timeline. So we can postpone it for some time, but not for indefinite times. Can one change the method of data collection during pandemic? My own sense is the data collection, which method of data collection should be adopted by the researcher, is actually guided by your topic of research. It is not guided by the situations. So if there is a pandemic, if there is a flood, if there is some other emergencies, we should not be thinking of changing our mode of research, mode of data collection, because remember, which method of data collection should be adopted by the researcher is guided by guided by your topic of research, not by the situations. If there are difficult situations, one could possibly wait for change of plan. We could change the plan a little bit, and I will talk about that, what change of plan we could possibly adopt. But we cannot shift from one situation to another, of one model of data collection to another, because remember, the method of data collection is guided by the topic of your research. It is not guided by the situation. If there are difficult situations, we can possibly change the data collection method a little bit, but we cannot change the entire mode of data collection. Which research method should be used for data collection in difficult times? Should one adopt entirely different model? It's very difficult to figure out, if there is a difficult time, which mode of data collection to adopt. As I said, mode of data collection is always guided by the topic of your research. If you have already decided on a topic, that will guide your mode of data collection, that will guide which research method you are going to apply, not the difficult times. Let me flag. Many of you would know, I'm sure everybody knows, that there are two broad methods of research, broad methods of doing research or collect. Now the question is, in the times of epidemic, in the times of difficult situations, should one adopt qualitative method or quantitative method? As I said earlier also, the method of data collection, whether you should adopt a quantitative method or a qualitative method, that should be guided by the topic of your research, because different topic requires different methods of data collection. It cannot be guided by the difficult situations. Let me flag some qualitative method, and then I will explain one of these methods for data collection. So how do we adjust when there are difficult times? Case study method. There is an ethnographic method of data collection. We do content analysis. People also do focus group discussions for data and for data gathering. There is also another method called observation method. I am not saying that these are the only 5 types of qualitative methods of data collection, but these are main types. These are the prominent methods of data collection. If a researcher uses a qualitative method of data collection. So these are 5 or 6 types of data collection if somebody uses a qualitative method of data collection. Based research, which is quantitative method. And what does this quantitative method mean? In quantitative method, researcher could either use aggregate data, the data which is already existing, or could collect data doing a survey. So if somebody is using a quantitative method of data collection, one could use the data which is already available, the existing data. One could also collect data on his or her own, but then you have to do the survey. So this is the quantitative method. Now, data collection in difficult times. As I said, maybe it's little repetitive, but repetitive is only because the point needs to be emphasized. Whichever method you may be using for data collection, there would be challenges for data collection, whether it requires field visit or not, with some exceptions. So whichever method a researcher has thought of using or has already started using the method for data collection, there is going to be lots of challenges if there are difficult times in data collection. Whether your data collection requires field visit, even if it does not explain about that you might be wondering, if there is no field visit required, how does it affect your data collection? Because you're sitting at home, and if you're sitting at home and collecting data, it should not affect the pandemic or difficult situation should not affect data collection. It does affect even if you're not required to go to the field, and I will explain that as well. If data collection requires your field visit, there are different restrictions on traveling, and there are unstated restrictions. One could imagine the difficulties in data collection. I don't think you need any expert to explain that if there are restrictions on your travel, if there are other restrictions like you have to maintain a distance of 6 feet at present time, in the COVID times, you have to wear a mask. So if there is a restrictions on field visit, if there is a restriction on traveling, how do you collect data? It's next to impossible that you would be able to collect data. And as I am saying, you don't need an expert to answer this question, how difficult it is going to be to collect data if there are restrictions on travel. So any method which has been adopted by the researcher of data collection, all that will be affected when there are difficult situations, when there are, and especially in situation like pandemic or situation like flood, survey work would be severely affected. Survey work gets affected. A survey method of data collection gets affected because you need to travel, you need to go to different places, you need to meet different. If the situation puts restrictions on your travel, you won't be able to travel and you won't be able to do the survey. So the data collection work based on survey would get severely affected. Ethnography would also be affected. Case study method, whether the case is one person or a group of person, or a case study would also mean doing a study on a place. So case study method of data collection will also get affected. Focus group discussion will also get affected by situation like COVID, may not get affected by other situations, maybe like flood. But in a COVID situation, focus group discussion of data collection also gets affected. Even content analysis gets affected, and you might recollect if you know what is content. I will explain it a little. You don't need to go out. You actually look at the content of things which are already published. But even in difficult, even data gathering based on content analysis gets affected. Participatory for data collection, that will also is bound to get affected, except few. We could think of one or two, but you can imagine that any dominant method or any method which is largely being used by a researcher these days in our country, all that will get affected if there is a difficult situation and a special situation like COVID. Moving on from how would ethnography get affected? If somebody is using ethnography for data collection, how does that get affected? What does ethnography requires? Ethnography requires long stay of researcher with the subject of his research. So if as you know, ethnographers stay in the area with the subject of their research for a very long period. You would know the name of Professor M.N. Srinivas. He did ethnography in a village near Mysore. What did he do? He stayed in that village for more than 2 years. So ethnographers spend a lot of time in their field of research. And when I say lot of time, I know, there were days when we used to have 5-day match, cricket match, which got reduced to 1 day and further to T20. And I'm sure 5 years down the line, maybe 5 years, maybe in few years from now, there may be a situation when there would be 1 over match. So what I'm trying to say, while ethnography requires a very long period of stay of the researcher in the field, but these days that long period of stay has also got reduced, but still it demands that ethnographer needs to be with the subject of his or her study for a very long period of time, at least for a month or two. So if ethnographer needs to be in the field for a month or two at least, in difficult times, this is going to be difficult. In COVID, you could imagine it's very difficult for the researcher to stay in field for 2 months. But as I said, the basic question, how do we do the data collection in these times? So the basic, connecting to the basic question, this could be possible by an ethnographer in the COVID times by using some precaution. The researcher can shorten the period of the study, may need to follow some precautions, and precautions may be like maintaining social distance. Some other compromises need to be adopted. So ethnography, the researcher may be able to do ethnography for data collection, but then he has to follow precautions, maintain social distancing, and engage in some other compromises. Case study method. In case study method also, especially if the case is a locality, if you're doing a study in some village, some district, some locality, that requires, if you're doing case study method for data collection, that requires your travel to that place, that requires, and if the case study is about a person or a group of people, that requires your constant interaction with that person or the group of people. So in a situation like COVID, this will also get affected. I think, so the researcher might need to do is to minimize the visit if the case the locality, and also minimize the interaction with the person or the group of is about a person, doing a case study on a person or a group of person. So this compromise needs to be done if the researcher is using a case study method for focus group method. Even focus group method of data collection, effect on of data collection would be far third. In a focus group method, all the people from whom you want to collect the data, they are invited to come in a group. They meet at one specific place. They discuss on the subject on which the researcher want to do the study. There is a moderator. So everybody is sitting in a closed group, in a closed group. So focus group is possible even in a situation like pandemic. But then what researcher needs to do is to have a focus group in a much larger, bigger group so that a social distancing could be maintained. You could think of inviting lesser number of participants. If you were thinking of inviting 50, you could think of inviting lesser number of participants for focus group. Follow other precautions in terms of in COVID time, use mask, use sanitizer. So these are the precautions which one could follow if somebody is using a focus group method of data collection. Content analysis. In a content analysis method, for the benefit of the researcher, normally the researcher analyzes the content which is already published, whether it is published in the newspaper or whether the content was there on the television screen or on the radio. So this does not require researcher traveling to the field. And you may be wondering that if it does not require researcher traveling to the field, how does this get affected? This also gets affected because in the content analysis, the researcher tries to collect the content which was available in the media, whether print or electronic media, at one specific time period, particular month. And if an unusual situation happens in that particular month, so the entire news get hijacked by that difficult situation. So if somebody was trying to collect data on, say, problem, say something on mental health, or say something on women in politics, and if somebody was trying to collect the data, if the researcher has thought of collecting the data in the month of April, so suddenly what happened in the month of April, the entire media, print, electronic, was full of news about COVID. So the news gets just a fair playing field to collect the data. So even content analysis method of data collection gets affected in difficult times. I gave an example of COVID. Suppose there are floods all over the country or in many states. So the news get hijacked by flood. So there is a lot of disproportionate news of flood in the media. And so it's not an usual time. So even content analysis method of data collection gets affected. Now moving on to survey. The survey method of data collection also gets severely affected. It gets affected. There is a lot of effect on that because survey requires people traveling to different places, to distant places for data collection. It also requires meeting people, talking to people, not meeting people in silent mode. You have to talk to the people. So traveling gets restricted. If you are not able to travel, how do you collect data? Even if you are able to travel, you have to meet people, you have to speak to the people in close proximity. You can't be at a distance of 6 feet and speaking to the people. So you have to come close to the people, very difficult. And as you know, it is being suggested that you have to maintain a distance. Also, surveys are about large numbers. We are not meeting 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 people. The survey is about large number. At least researchers should be collecting data from 300, 400 people. So how do you meet 300, 400 people in such difficult situation? The researcher would be exposing himself or herself to the virus. So this is very difficult situation of data collection for a researcher who is using survey method of data, in pandemic situation. So as I said, interviews requires meeting people and you have to meet large number of people. So it becomes very difficult. So possible solutions. What are the possible solutions of data collection if somebody is using survey method? Telephone interviews, web-based interviews, questionnaires to be emailed to people from whom you want to collect information. Also using postal mail for sending questions. As I said, these are possible alternatives, but every alternative has a limitation. Telephone interviews, it's not easy of a limitation. If in a survey method somebody wants to use telephone interview as a mode of data collection first, and the problem would be largely about sample being representative or not. All these would mean that the chances of researcher getting a sample which is unrepresentative would be very high. Normally, if you dial the number, most of the telephone numbers in India are in the name of male members. So if you randomly dial a number, the possibility of you, the researcher, getting interviews of male member would be high. Possibility of rejection would be very high. As I said, male members, if you have dialed a number and some female member in the house picks up the phone, there is always a tendency in middle class houses that if a stranger is talking to a woman, the chances of phone being transferred to a male member would be high. So the telephone interviews would end up would mean that researcher may not be able to get the data which would be representative of the universe. Also, the refusal rate would be very high. So that's the difficulty of telephone interview. Web-based interviews, it is going to be very heavily biased in favor of urban educated male. If we have put out a questionnaire on the website for people to fill, people who are the people who use website, and among them choosing to answer the question on the web is going to be very, very small. So they want to use web-based technique for data biased in favor of urban educated young male. Questionnaire to be emailed. If you email the questionnaire, again, the problem would be first, where do you get these emails? You will be possibly emailing it to people whom you have been interacting over last several years. So this will also mean researcher ending up getting a sample which will not be representative of the universe. And lastly, using postal mail, you could post the questionnaire to people's houses. The response rate, the return rate may be very low. People may not be willing to, send it back to you. Also, postal mail. I wanted Sunita Kumari to be interviewed because she is on my sample. I want a male-female interview to be conducted at such and such place. But who knows who filled up the questionnaire in her house, whether her son or her father or her husband filled up the questionnaire and put the name of Sunita Kumari. So the point I'm trying to make is that if somebody is trying to do is using survey method of data collection, these are possible alternatives of data collection. Telephone interview, web-based interviews, questionnaire could be emailed to people. You could even send postal mail, questionnaire through postal mail for people to give responses. The one big problem for all these alternative techniques is that the sample which all these would mean the sample would be heavily biased in favor of few variables. You create more male. This is one of these techniques of data collection in a hurry. If we have planned it well, we could move in a slightly better way. But if we do it in a hurry, if we shift our mode of data collection in between, because there is a pandemic, we were doing face-to-face interview, now switch to phone interview, switch to web-based interview. These are the problems research is going to face in data collection. I think I would stop here and would be happy to answer questions when people have questions about the presentation. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you so much, sir.
Ramya, I'm done.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you so much. So, Sanjay sir, thank you so much for that comprehensive insights that you have given to the participants. And I'm sure a lot of questions and a lot of issues that the researchers are already grappling with, you have actually given method-wise solutions and how new alternatives can be explored. So thank you once again, sir. And if the participants have any questions, you can please leave it in your chat. And for viewers on YouTube, I request you to kindly log in your questions on the forms link that is provided in the comments. Now, I request Professor Durga Prasad Garu to share his insights. Professor Durga Prasad Garu is a very senior researcher and is presently the visiting professor of sociology at the Central University of Odisha, Koraput. Professor Durga Prasad has the expertise of working with premier academic institutions like the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, the Institute of Rural Management, Anand, the National Institute of Rural Development, Hyderabad, National Council of Rural Institutes, Hyderabad, Central University of Mizoram, and Civil Services University of Ethiopia, and many other renowned institutions. As a teacher, researcher, and as a consultant, he visited USA, UK, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and many more countries on the world map. Professor Durga Prasad conducted 600 national and 70 international training programs, seminars, summits, and workshops for senior and middle-level officers of governmental and non-governmental organizations. He has worked on research and training projects with Government of India, WHO, World Bank, UNDP, DFID, CIRDAP, and CPS. When it comes to his educational qualifications, Professor Durga Prasad has an MA, MPhil, and PhD in sociology from Osmania University and Sardar Patel University, respectively. He has also obtained a PG certificate in social and environmental impact assessment from the School of Planning and Development, Bradford University, and Manchester University, England. He pursued PG certificate courses in HRD, rural development and livelihoods, participatory training, health management, computer and IT applications, to name a few. So, sir, over to you, sir.
And a very good morning to Professor Sanjay, Professor Suhan, Professor Venkatesh. Firstly, I must appreciate the theme chosen for the webinar today. And I'm happy that Professor Sanjay has laid an excellent foundation for the understanding of the students. I will focus not so much on what has already been covered to save on time and to gain insights. I will focus more on what are the alternatives that one can think of. For example, some of the important slides that Professor Sanjay has shown to us include, how best we can use the methods and what are the problems facing us. Yes, problems are there. I would like the students to firstly understand what is the guideline given by the university in the context of COVID-19 protocol. If it gives you time, then you can reschedule, or you can go through the shortcuts, informed shortcuts, as Professor Sanjay says, and then finish it. Or if you must obtain your master's or a doctoral program, if you must do something, what are the compromises you can make? So that is important for me to focus on. And I will share a few of my experiences. But before I go to specific illustrations based on our experience, I'm going to sensitize the students, potential researchers, teachers and others, is that when we are doing social science research of the kind that we are familiar with, and Professor Sanjay has also highlighted some examples. Now, what a student will miss now, right? If the student is required to do, given an option, as he said, COVID times are very difficult and you really can't find a way out. But if you must do, what are those things you must be aware of? One thing is that a good part of the emotional connect with the people is lost. That is very important for me. Then the insights that you are going to gather would be necessarily secondhand, right? And that itself puts a lot of pressure on you to enhance your understanding and get down to the reality, especially if it is a field-based kind of a research. Then there is also this problem that a student will very badly miss the challenges involved in data collection, right? For example, in some places, language problems, a few other cultural barriers would prevent you from asking the kind of questions in a way that you would like. Now, that kind of a difficulty what it means to learn from a field situation will be missed altogether. So this is another deprivation for a student. Then there are these metaverbal communication components that you normally get in a face-to-face situation. So a good part of our interpretation is based on the metaverbal communication, what is not said in an interview, right? The body language, the facial expression, and the integrity of a response can be gauged only in a face-to-face situation. So that you will be missing. Now, for a moment, I am not saying because of these deprivations, one should not try out the alternatives, especially the kind Professor Sanjay has listed, and I'm going to suggest a few more. But we must be aware, these are the deprivations, and there are no ways that one can find to find even near substitutes. So that's one other point. Then there is also this problem that in an interview, whether it is an individual interview or it's an interview of the kind of case study with an organization or a local community, so the kind of engagement brings that energy, right? In fact, in many field interviews where we are talking about sociological problems, psychological problems, political issues, the ones that Professor Sanjay is researching. Now, these require a kind of an energy that comes from the people. So actually, it is a classical case of synergy between the researcher and the people being researched. Then there are others who would share their insights. They may not be a part of your sample. Very often people tell me, why are you not interviewing me? So I would tell them different kinds of stories. So that is not important. But what is important is this synergy will be missing. So students should be aware that these are the deprivations one would face. To that extent, the quality of data collection, the quality of insights, the quality of analysis would also be falling short of the expected standards. So we should be prepared. So therefore, I take you back to my opening remark that if the university regulation says you must do for different reasons, or if a research sponsor tells you that you must submit the project by this timeline, so you are required to have inputs given at a given point of time. So the timeline is fixed. Similarly, there are these longitudinal studies. The approach is totally modular. So you really can't wait for 2-3 months for situations to improve. So in a longitudinal study, you need to have these modules introduced at different points of time. And maybe longitudinal study gives you more time. But then each module should be introduced at a particular length of time. So that is one other problem that one will be missing. Then there is this verifiability problem, right? In the field situation, one can straight away verify. And then I spoke about the integrity of the people being researched, integrity of the researcher, all these things. Remember, they are also analyzing you. So they will be missing us in such in-depth studies where the psychological, sociological dimensions are involved. So we have to be aware of that. Then coming back to the points that Professor Sanjay has mentioned, one important thing that we have experimented here is that we looked at the problem of return migrants back to Odisha from places like Surat, Ahmedabad, some parts of Telangana, Sholapur, and elsewhere, including Kashmir and Uttar Pradesh. Now, how do we interact with them, right? So it is not possible to follow a set of methods that we have already seen in the slideshow. We'll have to go beyond, right? So we would like to talk to ideally groups of people, but that is not possible. Now, where it is possible, a researcher can go and stay there, right? So couple of our researchers stayed in the place of research with all the COVID-19 protocols in place. So they got quarantined, and then there was this informal quarantine within villages, and they looked at that. Then they themselves have organized small groups, for example, focus group discussion, right? So they have obtained data from the panchayats. As you are aware, the local panchayats in Orissa have been empowered to firstly take care of the welfare of the people, then collect some basic information about their health and well-being, especially mental well-being, then the place where they have come from, so that the possible solutions that one can gather can be put in place. All this data is there. And then what kind of a skill they have, right? And what are they doing now? Now, that was our objective of this project. Skill mapping, reskilling, upskilling, and so on. So if that was the project, it required close interaction. So we had to talk to the people. So we trained this person, and the person was expected to take care of all the COVID protocols. Please remember, there should be no compromise of any kind, not even an informed compromise, but leave it to the people. Tell the researcher the risks involved, tell the people the risks involved, but then people were willing because they wanted alternative employment through rural employment schemes or the local skill development programs or the crafts and trades alternatives and so on, because they were aware that they wouldn't be able to go home back to Gujarat or Maharashtra or any of these places. So we used that panchayat data, and we used the researcher that we have sent. That was one thing. Second thing is, if your researcher cannot be located there, then we can train people to actually do a focus group discussion, right? So we interacted where possible online, telephone, and then we wrote small letters to them how to conduct a focus group discussion. Now, who are these people we have made use of? It is the typical village level worker. It is the social worker of an NGO called CYD, right? Then there are these students pursuing different types of courses. So it's very exciting for them to do it. In any case, they are already located there. So one need not go there and fear something may happen. They are already there. And if they are bound to catch some problem, it is left to them there itself. So therefore, they are in a better, comfortable zone, and they are willing to contribute something to the development of people. Some may be their own brothers and sisters, some may be community members. So they were willing. So we trained them to collect information on our behalf. So that is one very solid method that we have used, and that information is now being processed, and we would like to see what is this skill map telling us, right? And secondly, do we need to reskill them as articulated by them? Or if they would like to stay back and build on their existing skills, we said, okay, there can be a proposal for upskilling. So this is a joint project with the Orissa Rural Livelihood Mission and a part of NRLM, and then the local initiatives have also been factored into our discussion. So that's one example where we have made use of the panchayat, the researchers trained by us, because incidentally many of these researchers came from those areas which were already facing problems. So they had to follow some basic protocols, take personal care, and then be aware of risks. So it's our responsibility to tell us what are the risks they are facing, to repeat what are the risks the people being researched are facing, and so on. So that's the other kind of a thing. Then it is also possible that we can use other methods. We have used documentaries made by the local NGOs. So that is one other important source of information. Whenever the migrant labor either got dislocated, or as Professor Venkatesh has mentioned, they were victims of a flood ravaging parts of Orissa now. So it keeps happening in many places, including the place where I come from in Andhra. Now, right now, floods have dislocated people. So they need to be rehabilitated. So such projects, if you are doing, then timing is very important. Where it is possible to postpone, we can always postpone. So it's very important that we collect data on time so that the priority is kept in mind. If it is not a priority issue, don't worry. But this is possible to do that. So we looked at documentaries, and the problems of migrants we have analyzed by doing desk analysis. Professor Sanjay also referred to content analysis of documents. So there are different types of documents. We looked at the documents which have been archived with the Labor Commissioner. Then we have also looked at some of the documentary short films, and there the problems that they have faced were a source of information for us. Not that problems are comparable between groups at different points of time, but we do get some insight. So when we are doing content analysis of audio visual material like documentaries or an archived record or a labor commissioner's report on the case study of what happened to migrants before. So that can be used very productively and improve upon the insights. And the problem continues to remain. The data collection is not easy. We are aware, we take care, and then look at that. Then the third important source of information, if it is already predetermined that a large part will be field-based, then the first two methods I've mentioned can give you only a partial insight. And if some more data has to be done, then action research projects, whether ongoing or previous ones, archived ones. So we looked at some of the action research points. What do people do at difficult times, right? So there are people who have organized groups of tribal girls to receive education. So for example, the Xavier group of institutes in Bhubaneswar and elsewhere have done it. Similarly, the KBK interventions in Odisha, they have done it. We have seen in Uttar Pradesh, we have seen in Andhra, we have seen in Himachal Pradesh. Action research projects are a major source of information for us, right? The community may not be the same, but many communities are comparable within a broad region. Let us say the tribal region that where I am working now. There could be non-tribal regions. But then in action research project, what are those decisions that people make on the basis of what types of data? So that is an insight for us, and we benefited significantly from that kind of an analysis through action research projects. So one is to see how leaders have developed insights on the basis of action by the community. Then there are these guides within the village, external guides, so they can tell us, and whatever they have shared, either in report form or a documentation form, we can look at it. So that's one other way of overcoming the problems that Professor Sanjay has so meticulously listed, and I'm impressed with the kind of narrative that he has built around that. Then we can also make use of this adversity. So we have made use of school teachers. They are already there. So it's little less difficult. I won't say easy. It is less difficult to orient teachers on your behalf to do the kind of field exercises which you would have otherwise liked to do it yourself or through a research investigation team. So if the team is missing, if you can't go there, then can we learn to use the local resource persons like the teachers, the village level workers, community organizers, for example, on your behalf, and collect data through participatory appraisal methods. Then there are also these secondary sources of opinions, right? Those who have already done similar projects, talk to them on phone, right? So whatever you missed, they can perhaps give you some insight. It may not be comparable on a one-to-one basis because the community is different, the region is different. But if it is a common region, let us say southern Orissa or northern Telangana or eastern Uttar Pradesh, in Fatehpur, where I have done my field studies in the last 3-4 years on drinking water and sanitation as a major utility that was to be managed by a user group in Etawah in eastern Uttar Pradesh. So it is possible to do that. Then there is one other shortcut as part of the participatory research initiative, is that there are these research projects, right, of organizations, research projects of students, PhD projects, for example. Dr. Ramya herself is doing a very significant project on public policy and how services are delivered, what kinds of right to information issues are there. If you would like to know that kind of a thing, then it is possible that one can get into such documents as would help you to understand. So there is this public defense. If someone is making a public defense, if you can go there and listen to them where possible, right? We already put that rider. If COVID is preventing you, nothing is possible. But there are some ways out because of the compulsions I've mentioned. Sponsors, university, examination controllers and all that, if they are putting pressure, do it. So this defense that is already there on comparable projects can give you very good insights. So we have got ready-made defense projects where one can sit down and listen, or archived projects which have been publicly defended. In many XLRI, there is one human relations thing, someone defended and that's been a recorded one because that's a statutory requirement. So one can play that and see a situation that is comparable. So one can benefit from that kind of a research thesis, which has already been completed and comparable to your field situation. So it's a broad simulation thing. It can never be anywhere very close to the reality, but it can be proximate to obtaining some insights about the project you are researching. So that's one thing. Then, of course, many of you are research scholars. Some of you are young teachers. You are pretty well aware about Shodh Ganga. Already doctoral projects are there. So what they have done. And I heard Professor Sanjay saying in the beginning that once you have fixed your design, the data collection method may have to be tweaked a little bit. But then the type of research problem will determine the content. The content will determine the method of data collection. So that sequence is intact, but we cannot help sometimes overcome these problems. So therefore, we need to look at that opportunity of Shodh Ganga thesis, case studies in various forms. In other words, what we are doing under the broad heading of participatory research is that we are triangulating information. We are triangulating reports. We are triangulating viewpoints. We are triangulating simulation exercises, right? We are triangulating field reports. So it is possible to triangulate on 8 or 9 parameters. So we have done it, and I believe triangulation is one major way out in difficult COVID times. So I would like to make this point clear that there are ways of looking at them. Of course, ethnographic research, Professor Sanjay has already highlighted the nuances and the difficulties. So it is really not possible to do that, but still the kind of issues that we have reviewed, the kind of problems we have confronted, and the ways out I have discussed with you can be a part answer to the kind of issues we have on hand. Then there are these telephonic interviews and surveys that one has talked about. So depending on the type of the problem, the level of literacy, the resource comfort, connectivity, internet, telephone, and all that. If those things are intact, you are all familiar. One can administer questionnaires depending on your study. You can use Google Forms. We surveyed in public sector organizations last week through a Google form, and we canvassed it to the homemakers of Hindustan Aeronautics, NALCO, and elsewhere, and collected data through Google Forms. Then we have also made use of some kind of mailed questionnaire. In fact, I must share before I pass it back to the other speaker. We have conducted for the first time home-based final examination for our terminal examination students. So what we have done is, where possible, we collected block-wise information about net availability. So we have emailed our open book home-based examination question paper 1 hour before the exam by means of WhatsApp, Google form, and many other social media applications that we are talking about. Then they were asked to write the traditional pen and paper examination back at home, right? And then after the end of 3 hours, mind you, this was not a proctored thing, and it's an open book kind of thing. So the only care we have taken is we framed questions in a way that it did not allow a student to straight away copy and paste from the sources back at home. So we allowed them to consult books, notes, consult even internet, but we framed questions in a way that they could take the exam at home. Then they were asked to send the answer books, average of 18 to 19 pages. So they have photographed the pages and mailed it back to us. And in places where it was difficult for them to mail it back for any reason of connectivity, we even said you could mail it by speed post or through a courier, human courier or a postal courier, and then they are a part of the exam. And we did not insist on the timing per se in terms of punishment for not receiving on time. So we have successfully conducted that. Now it is become an example for other universities how to conduct an examination in places. And remember, many parts of southern Orissa, eastern Orissa have serious problems of connectivity. So some people took their examination in internet cafes, or they went to a group of students who had better connectivity. So they wrote the exam in that zone, but not in consultation with one another. So these are the ways of looking at problems of the kind that COVID presents to you. What are the ways out? And I'll come back to Dr. Ramya, and Professor Sanjay may like to say a few things, and then we'll take it forward from there.
Now, I think we have a few questions that are coming up on the chat windows, and also there were a lot of participants who have given us some questions, and I'm sure that many of the questions have already been addressed by the speakers in their presentations. Nevertheless, I would like to highlight some questions that have been asked here on the chat window as well as on the YouTube channel that we are streaming on. So there are a lot of research scholars who are looking at some vulnerable sections or some target groups like the tribal areas, or there was a question where a research scholar is working on rickshaw pullers in a particular state. So they are trying to understand on how to target, how to make it a representative sample when it comes to such kind of target groups.
The response to this question is very simple. You can only figure out whether your sample is representative or not only if you have information about the universe. The researcher who is asking this question, that he or she is doing a survey among the rickshaw pullers, whether it is in a city or in a state or the country as a whole, we don't have any formal information about the rickshaw pullers. So even if somebody is doing a study of rickshaw pullers in Hyderabad, there is no data to compare with the sample which researcher would be collecting in terms of age, gender, education, occupation, from which state they are coming from, etc. So it is not possible for a researcher who is doing a study on such informal sectors for which we don't have a already ready reference data to figure out whether the sample is representative or not. So researcher should not bother about whether he or she has got a representative data of research of rickshaw pullers in the city. He should try and spread it out as far as possible across the city in which he or she is doing the survey.
Yeah, here we have seen back in Usmania University students looking at this rickshaw pullers problem during non-COVID times. Now, during COVID times, what would happen? Ideally, I'm simulating the situation to answer the students' question. Is that now many of the rickshaw pullers are not owner drivers, right? So they will all be taking rickshaws from owners. Typically, owners include money lenders. In fact, many policemen also are owners of several rickshaws in different places. So when they assemble in the evening, they have to park the vehicles at a designated place because of security reason. So when they are back there, that's one area where the rickshaw giving person can also be a good source of information for you. Apart from the sample problems, don't worry too much about being representative or not in terms of our sampling framework, but it is possible to collect information from that owner. So that is very important for us. And then some of the users who are in the neighborhood can also be interviewed. So one need not worry too much about accuracy and sample size adequacy and all that. So it is still possible to use this if the student must do now. Otherwise, one has to wait for some time.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, the next question is on, and I think Professor Sanjay and Professor Durga Prasad Garu has already addressed this, but a lot of research scholars or, the participants have this question on how can they approach the respondents in rural areas, especially when some villages are being locked down or they do not have to access to that village, and how do they ensure safety of themselves and ensure or assure the people in the rural areas about the survey research method that they have adopted and the interviews to be conducted?
Oh, this is not one question, Ramya. There are lots of questions in that. First, if the village is locked down, you can't do anything. If the villagers don't allow you to go inside, lockdown, you can't do anything. Second point, but if you manage to, negotiate, you go there, how do you ensure the safety of your safety as well as the safety of the people from whom you are collecting the data? Simple safety norms which we are adopting, like you are adopting in your university and your house, like I am adopting in my in my house and in my institution. Wearing masks, washing your hands frequently, using sanitizers. So when you are, and also keeping, when you are talking to your person, when you are talking to the person from whom you are collecting the data, keeping a safe distance, because uh, you have to keep a safe distance, because when you speak, when you breathe, the chances of virus entering from one person's to another person's mouth or nose is very high. So that is why the whole purpose of wearing the mask is there and keeping a safe distance. So this is, I think, a response to the question which has been posed by the researcher.
I will add a small insight to this one. In fact, the local panchayats here in Ganjam and Barampur, where many of the return migrants have their homes located. So there, the villagers barricaded and prevented people from entering. But then if the purpose is explained to the panchayat persons and the others in charge of the village welfare, you may not be allowed to enter. But with the kind of care that Professor Sanjay has just listed without repeating, after taking care, one could come out of the villages. Designate people can come out. You can't go into the village because you are yourself a carrier. But a few respected people with some skill can come out, and they were the people who gave information that how many people would like to go out back to their work. So that data was very important for people to arrange for a process of reversing the migration. They have come back from somewhere, now they would like to go back because they could not adjust with the rural employment guarantee program. Everybody cannot do earth work, and then their skill was very limited. And those who wanted to go, I am told close to 70 lakh people would like to go back, and then they are faced with this problem. So there are people who interviewed, and they were told that they should remain in the village during this interview, and they were not welcome back in Surat, because the Surat Textile Association, Labor Welfare Association, warned the Ganjam people that we will not give you any house on rent if you come back here. So don't come, right? So this insight was gathered through a quick appraisal outside the village. So if you are not allowed to enter the village, and the problems that the student has raised, Professor Sanjay has summarized, after all that care, one can always ask someone to come out and find out what is the thinking inside the village. How many would like to go back? So that the state could make concomitant arrangements for those who would like to go back, because already agents have come to nearby districts like Barampur within Ganjam, waiting to take the people back. So they are looking for some information, and there are people who are doing very quick appraisals. So this is my additional information.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there are two more questions, one on internet online interviews and one on telephonic interviews. So there is a participant who wishes to know, how do we ensure that we are getting the right kind of responses from the participants when we are doing a telephonic survey? First thing is some people are saying that people are not agreeing to do telephonic surveys. And if people are agreeing for telephonic surveys, how do we ensure the validity or the correctness of the data?
There is no right or wrong response to any questionnaire, whether you have administered face-to-face, whether you have administered the questionnaire through telephone or through web or any mode. So we are no one, there is no tool to judge whether the response is right or wrong, whether what is the validity of that response. Many times the responses surprises us, and I will just give you an example. If you ask the age of a person for an urban, and if the person says, I don't know my age, we have, as a researcher, we should not be questioning that this person is telling me a lie, because how come he doesn't know the age, his or her own age. This may be a reality, because you can imagine a person like Professor Prasad is mentioning, maybe interviewing someone in Ganjam district, in a very rural village, in Ganjam district. Look at the illiteracy, 70-year-old, 75-year-old village, women in that village. She may not be knowing the age. So the point I'm trying to make in short is that there is no way to, at least when you are interviewing someone, validity of the entire survey could be measured by different tools, whether the responses are valid, what is the level of validity, all those checks can be applied. But when you are interviewing someone, when you get responses at that time, it is, I don't think there is any tool available to the researcher to figure out whether these responses are valid or not, whether the person is giving me the right response or the wrong response.
Yeah, I will add very quick point is that triangulation is probably one more answer. So if you are not sure whether people would be able to give correct age, it depends on the type of inquiry you are making. If it is a healthcare survey, then you can triangulate the telephonic interview with those of the views of a paramedical worker or a healthcare specialist or an NGO which is taking care of healthcare, right? Someone is providing ambulance services in a nearby village. So you can broadly triangulate and enhance the quality of understanding. There is no shortcut to it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this is the last question, and it is on internet online surveys, sir. So the question is, issue with online interviews depends on the internet infrastructure, especially when we have this limitation in the remote areas or in the rural areas. So when you're targeting or when your population or your sample is in the rural areas, and when we do not have access to mobiles or internet connectivity is poor, what are the alternatives?
The question already has answers inbuilt in that. The connectivity is poor and the study is to be conducted in the rural India. The connectivity is poor. Also remember that the proportion of people using internet is very less in rural India. At the moment, approximately 20% of Indians use internet, 20% of Indians. And if you look at rural urban divide, it would be far less in rural India, only 7 or 8% left, maybe around that, maybe at the most 10% people in rural India are using internet. And when we say internet, most of them think of say WhatsApp etc. as net use kar rahe hain, I'm using the net. So as I said, the question already has answers inbuilt in that. The connectivity, the proportion of people using internet is very low. So if you are targeting a cross section of people to be interviewed in rural India, you will not be able to reach to those people if you want to use internet as your medium of data collection. Second, even if you are able to send your questionnaire through internet to some people, internet connectivity is low. Third point, even if I receive the questionnaire, I'm not sure whether I would have the motivation to actually log on to my email or to WhatsApp and answer those questions, which may be lengthy, 2 pages, 3 pages. So I may not have the motivation. So various kinds of difficulty. Proportion of people, number of people using internet is low. Among those who use the internet is slow, so it would be very difficult for you to reach to them. And the third level of difficulty is that even if I reach, if as a researcher I am able to send it out to 100 people in the rural India, I am not sure whether those people are going to send back their responses or not. And also the other difficulty, even if I get the responses, I am not sure whether I wanted the response from Professor Durga Prasad, whether Professor Durga Prasad has sent his responses or somebody else on his behalf actually sent the responses. You had sent it on my mobile, but my daughter actually filled the questionnaire and sent it back to you. So all kinds of difficulty. Now the question is, how do you collect the data? You have already mentioned, as I said, the question already had the response. Internet is not the solution. You cannot, it is very difficult to collect information using internet. If the survey is to be done in the rural India, I think the only way out is to go meet the people, face-to-face interviews. That's the only solution. And I think the overall discussion, overall presentation of Professor Durga Prasad, one point was very striking: make use of local resources. If you are not able to go to the rural India to collect the data using survey, make use of local resources. That's a very important point which he mentioned, which stuck to me, and I will take some clue from that, and I will also explore possibilities of that kind. Make use of local resources, connect, try and get hold of the people in that village where you want to collect the data, because you have to collect face to face in data. uh, you have to engage in face to face data collection if you want to collect data from interior places in the rural India. Done.
So thank you so much, sir. Sir, now as we come to a close of the webinar, I request Professor Venkateshu to kindly take the floor, sir.
Yes, we had quite interesting and fruitful interaction come discussion with the practicing researchers. One is sample survey, another one is the action research. One is the field level. This sample survey is certainly requires when it is spreading across the country. Lot of field investigators. Field investigators are the key instruments or agencies in conducting of the field-based data for the survey research. So now we have during this crisis we have certainly so many problems. But when you are making use of the telephonic conversation, when there is a difficulty in even getting the mobile numbers or telephone numbers of the respondents with whom the field investigator is supposed to be interacted. So for that, our Lokniti supervisor by name Gangretla Srinivas, he found a potential source at the village level, what is known as BLOs, booth level officials. The booth level officials contact numbers are available on the Election Commission of India website as well as the respective state election commission website. Probably they will provide one of the most potential source in terms of exactly figuring out, because our experience even after coming back from the field by our field investigator, while taking the mobile number of respondents, sometimes when we call them back, again their number is subjected to change. So in that case, the booth level officials probably will provide the accurate number as well as the accurate person with whom we are supposed to speak. Is the one practice that can be adopted in this context of the crisis. And of course, this action research that is living with the people and involving so many local institutions, whether it's a local governance institutions, the self-help group, the community-based organizations, the civil society or NGOs, civil society organizations, NGOs, etc., or even the local leaders and the bureaucrats. Several sources or agencies have been existing in order to reaching logical end the basic objective of a public policy. That is when you are because that too, in the action research context, the community will be living in the village. The information of that almost all the people who are living in this small hamlet or in a ward that is available with the local people. So that is the one convenient source, so that the people can contact, the researchers can contact from the outside. But anyway, in this situation, this crisis situation, Professor Durga Prasad has been doing a wonderful work, and his field-based inputs have been providing a lot of insights to the policy executives at the state level. And of course, even this examination model, the examination model that has been adopted by Central University of Odisha, sending the question paper, asking the students to write and make a copy and send it back to the concerned faculty member. I think that is one of the best practice that has been emerging in this context of crisis. Probably that is one of the practice, that is what the UGC has been suggesting, in this during this period also to conduct the examinations, because by September all the end semester examination or final year students examinations are supposed to be conducted. Their evidence of examination as well as the marks are supposed to be ready. So this is the one way that because of the finest people are there at the field level, and they have did some innovation in this during this crisis. Of course, this necessity is the mother of invention. So that has been has come up as evolved. So so both the potential resource persons have provided excellent insights for the research scholars. From in fact, there are, when you look at the profile names on the, just by looking at the names of the participants, it has been representing from the Kashmir to Kanyakumari and Gujarat to northeastern part of the country. Almost every part of the country, the participants were there. I think they have immensely enriched from the kind of inputs provided by the resource persons. With this brief remarks, now I'd like to request Ramya to propose the vote of thanks to the resource persons.
Thank you, Professor Venkateshu. Before I propose the vote of thanks, I request Professor Suwan to kindly make the concluding remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramya, and thank you to the two eminent panelists today for your very good insights on how to take field-based research forward in a very extraordinary time such as the one that COVID entails. I hope participants benefit greatly from these presentations. One of the things that we have to grapple with is, as the two eminent speakers have outlined, is how do you establish credibility or verifiability of the kind of responses that we get from the fields, especially in terms of the kind of response that we get from telephonic interviews, or in terms of response to questionnaires that we generated through the internet medium. So one of the ways of doing that would depend upon, as Professor Durga Prasad pointed out, on how best we establish a rapport and connection with local sources, how best we make use of the local sources and connection and networks that we have been able to establish in the field, in order to establish full proof of the kind of informations that we generated from the questionnaires that we give to the respondents. So I think, as Venkateshu has pointed out, extraordinary times demands creativity, innovations, so and so forth. And I think the onus is on us as researchers who are doing field-based research to come out with foolproof verifiability of the kind of data that we get and generate from the field. And I think the whole world is open before us. But one of the things that we cannot possibly sacrifice in such extraordinary times is that we cannot foreclose the possibility of having the benefit of field-based research, because if we are really serious in thick description of research, in building theoretically grounded research for the future, I think field-based research is an imperative. And to this extent, I think the two deliberations and the two presentations today show us the way forward of alternative ways of doing things, the kind of issues and challenges that come up as a result of this extraordinary situation. And I hope that participants of this webinar would benefit on ways to prepare themselves to face the new world that COVID unleashed. And with this note, I think once again, the two eminent speakers for taking out their time and enlightening the scholars from not only from my department, but from various departments of the university and from different parts of India to this very pertinent and very relevant, important research. Thank you once again, Ramya. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Suvan. So as we close the webinar today, I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. Firstly, on behalf of the Department of Political Science, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Sanjay Kumar and Professor Durga Prasad Garu for being the most valued speakers for this webinar. I'm thankful to you both for giving us the time and the expertise to address the many researchers and research scholars' problems that they're grappling with in these testing times. I must thank Professor Sanjay for his invaluable inputs to address the issues that are being faced by the researchers in these unprecedented times. I also wish to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Durga Prasad for comprehensively addressing the problems, citing examples from his vast research experience. And now I thank Professor Suvan, the head of the Department, Political Science, for his continuous support right from the conceptualization to the conducting of the program today. I also thank Professor Venkateshu for readily agreeing to the proposal of conducting this webinar and being a constant support. Last but never the least, I thank all the participants from across the country who have registered, participated, and made this webinar a success. To put it on record, we have had about 250 plus registrations, and we have had close to 90 participants, both on Zoom and the YouTube platforms. I also express my sincere apologies to the participants for any kind of technical glitches. And I also thank Mr. Srinivas, Mr. Anudeep, Ms. Blessy Matthew, all from the Department of Political Science, School of Social Sciences, for all the technical help. Before we close, I request all the participants to kindly share their feedback with us in the link provided in the chat window on Zoom and in the messages in the YouTube. Lastly, like all of us have been stressing, extraordinary times like these require extraordinary solutions. And as research scholars, let us do an extraordinary work in this testing times, because when we look back, we will surely have some very fruitful research. So I once again thank Professor Sanjay Kumar and Professor Durga Prasad Garu for readily agreeing to our request just through one phone call in this era of pandemic, and where we just communicated only through mails and through telephone. So thank you so much once again, sir. And yes, it would have been a pleasure to have you present in our university. But then this is the testing time for us to have a webinar like this. So we hope to have a face-to-face, a physical interaction with you soon in the university also. Thank you so much once again, sir. And I request all the participants to kindly share their feedback. And I think we are right on time. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.